Well, good morning there, Danielle.
Danielle?
I know. I've misgendered you. Please forgive
me.
me.
It's not the first time that's happened.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think this is how we do it.
Well, sure. Are you all experiencing audio lag?
Is it just me, or is this rider broken?
Ow.
Oh, good morning, man.
Morning.
Happy Tuesday.
Yes, it is a happy Tuesday.
You know what they say, Titty Tuesdays.
Is that what? I wasn't allowed to say that when I was teaching school, it was trigonometry Tuesdays.
Yeah, that's what it was.
That's
Triggy Tuesday.
It's so close.
Freudian
so
slip.
Close.
You know?
I know, right?
So I was talking with my friend the other day about a Freudian slip. How would you define a Freudian slip?
When you should be saying something quite normal and banal, and somehow it turns sexual just by your word
Okay, so
use.
it does have to be sexual. Is there a name for when it's like non-sexual? Like, or does it depend on like what you inject? Like if it's like food related, is like a famous chef.
Yeah, well, like food can be a fetish and that can be sexual. So there, that's the thing with sex is it can be anything. So it doesn't matter.
So sex applies everywhere.
Everything.
So why does it
all
need
the time? It
name?
Doesn't. When I say it's a sexual slip up, it's just a slip up.
It's just a nip
right?
up. You know, it's all you need, right? Man. So, well, good morning, Ryder. So yesterday was Monday. Were you aware of that?
I was very aware. I'm very aware of my Mondays.
Migraine Mondays.
Migraine Mondays. These days.
Woo! Well, yesterday we talked about intentional manifesting, and that was Danielle and me on the mics. You know, we're actually rappers now.
MCs.
MC.
Or you're not a master of ceremony yet. You're just working up to it.
It's like the great ascension. You know, it's one step at a time. You know.
And the world will have your journey.
Yeah, I'm still.
Is this what you're trying to manifest?
It is. I'm actually a red belt in MCing. So I'm working my way up. Every night I've got to battle another one of the MCs.
Right. Yeah, you practice your MC kata.
Yeah.
Yes.
First blood. I mean,
You watch Jean-Claude Van Damme every night. That's how you become an MC.
So yesterday we were talking about intentional manifesting.
Yes.
And so first we started off by defining the two words, like intentional and manifest. And I'm curious, if I say, what does the word intentional mean? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think it has to be something sort of more deeply considered or focused, because you can manifest things subliminally or subconsciously, which is what most of us are doing all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, when your life sucks, you might just unintentionally be manifesting that.
Right? It's like, oh, you don't realize it, but and not always are you causing the thing, but at the least you can be setting the lens that you're viewing it through. Right? It's like, oh, well, if you think your life sucks and, oh, it's the worst, well, like every time some small thing happens, it's negative, you're going to pay that much more attention to it. And we've talked about it in the show before. When you have that mindset and you walk around the corner, or you bang your elbow on the door frame, it's like,
you fall down and roll over. And then out of nowhere, is that a fart? You hit your elbow and you roll around a little. And
so yeah, intentionality. So we were struggling because I was like, it's one of those words where I'm like, yeah, it's when your intention. Well, I can't use the word inside the word about the definition. I was like, so you did a great job. Well done.
Thanks. I was trying to dodge that same bullet. But
yeah.
Oh,
I guess with all your experience at the Matrix, it just makes it easier for you. Everything moving in slow motion.
It's actually, I just have a slightly larger vocabulary, so I just use more words.
Nice.
It's not that they're any better.
Hey,
just more of them.
Look, man, just because my parents are from Mississippi don't mean I don't know them words, okay? So when we're being intentional, the other word we're talking about is manifesting. And what you heard that word plenty?
Yeah. I remember reading some books that were about like The Secret or something like this, right? Where you would somehow have some sort of wish for the universe, and you would write it down, and you'd concentrate on it, and you'd put it out there, and then the universe will deliver. Something along those lines.
And that's exactly the book that we referenced yesterday. So well done. So
Thank
yes,
you.
manifesting, which, to be frank, I didn't look at the history, so I don't know how long that term's been in vogue, if you will. But The Secret is certainly a very popular book talking about it. The idea of putting something out there into the world, manifesting it, making it happen. And so by intentionally manifesting, it's like, all right, if you're going to try to intentionally manifest something, well, one, you're taking a little bit of that kind of accidental part out of it. You're taking some of those percentages and trying to work them in your favor. But so we talked a little bit about yesterday about how it can be a very powerful thing, and how, if there's some change you want to make in your life, something you want to do, by trying to intentionally manifest it, you're going to make it that much more likely it's going to happen. And we talked a little bit about some of the ways that Danielle has done that. And as she started talking through her examples, we realized like, oh, wow, like you're leveraging each of those pillars that Eric Wooten has talked to us about before in previous episodes, because she said, all right, well, first I sat there and I thought about like, okay, well, what is it that I really want to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to figure that out? And then she writes it down. She journals it. So she says, okay, I have this thought in my head. Now I'm going to try and like turn it into reality. And it's like, okay, so now I'm going to write this down. I'm going to be intentional and say, I'm trying to do this thing. And then what she did was she plugged into some community, and she said, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to make this thing happen. Let's, help me do this. And if you guys know other ways to make it easier or better, stronger, all those types of things. And she did. And then she also had the personal responsibility by oftentimes when she's doing something like that, she'll use a habit tracker. And she'll be like, okay, I said I wanted to, do that thing. Like, am I doing the small steps I can do every day? Am I taking that one small bite that I can every day? And so as she told, like, oh, that's how I intentionally manifest, I'm like, oh, well, thanks. You got community, you got personal responsibility, intentionality, just like Eric talked to us about. And it's like, oh, it seems to be perfect. I mean, he talks to us about relationships, but one of those relationships we pointed out is to yourself. We talked in the past about how it's not just romantic, it's also to your friend, a coworker, family member, but it's also to yourself. And we talked about boundaries and how sometimes we need to set boundaries for ourselves, and maybe we don't have those boundaries.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing as well whenever you're trying to manifest all these things, right? Like, who do you want to be? What do you want to be? What do you want out of life? And you can come up with these amazing things. And sometimes there's amazing opportunities that are even there for you. And then you can jump into those and then realize, oh, yeah, this is a great opportunity. But it might also be causing issues.
Yeah.
And so that's I mean, that's happened to me numerous times. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is a well, real quick, that's a good transition to one little mini topic we're going to have here, but I want to finish the recap. And part of the recap, we also talked about TED Talk, which we've mentioned on the show before, but it's called Isolation is the Dream Killer. And that was the one, in case, I don't know if we talked about it with you or not, but basically there was someone who's like, oh, I want to dance with Patrick Swayze. And they're like, there's no way that'll happen. And then someone else stands up in the audience and they're like, I work at a spa and he comes here every April and he'll be totally down to that. He's a really nice guy. And they're like, yeah, we can all do it. You just need to tell people, that one.
Yeah.
So I made it sound really cheesy just now, but it actually is really cool and really powerful and a good reminder. Like it's hard for us because our first intention a lot of times is to like go internalize that thing and say, oh, this is our idea, our baby. We're going to protect it. We don't want to tell anyone about it. We know about that. We're good at that marketing thing.
Yeah,
right?
we're good at babies too and protecting
Yes,
them. And,
yes.
It's our warrior culture.
You guys, we have news for you. 9 months from now, I don't know what the baby's going to be. Probably a demon spawn child.
I know. But we're not going to do a gender reveal or anything, so don't worry.
It might have a mohawk coming out. There may be flames involved, poison. I don't know.
Lots of good stuff.
But we ended up yesterday by talking about the Mystic Collective, which is a group of women that Danielle's involved in, who are kind of in the... I want to say mystical arts because it sounds fancy, but in the spiritual and mystical space, right? So herbology and doing yoga, meditation, mindfulness, things like that. Anyway, so with that group here in McKinney, they hosted an event last night to celebrate a pagan holiday called Imbolc. Have you ever heard of it before? I may be pronouncing it wrong. It's
like
one of those
shipping in bulk.
Exactly. That's what it made me think of too. And so we talked a little bit about that yesterday, but essentially what it is it's like the in between like winter and spring. It's like, it's on or near the spring equinox, which I think is when instead of the days, you're starting to get more sun. Basically, it's like halfway between the solstices. So
Okay.
winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, and the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. I believe it's about halfway in the middle. So that's where it starts to shift. So it's celebrating that, and it's like, hey, spring's about to come, kind of similar to Groundhog Day vibes. And it's also, let's go sow our seeds because we're going to be harvesting soon, and let's go ahead and plant our thing. Let's put our intentions there. Yeah. Let's start to work on them, water them, so that way we'll have a great harvest. And so that's what that ceremony was about. And so they had an event doing that last night. So that was our episode yesterday, but I want to go ahead and transition just real briefly to a quick topic between us, which was, as we're trying to do things, as we're trying to make things happen in the world, one of the things is making sure that we are doing them the way that we want to and the way that is sustainable and makes sense for us, right? And for me, with Helpful for Life, that means containing the energy I have sometimes where it's like, I want to do all of this stuff and I want it to be here tomorrow. This weekend, we're going to do all the things and we're going to come and everything's going to be fire. And then it's like, wait a second. Like, you started this so you could like have work-life balance and create a company the way you want to and don't go so fast. Like, you and people are like, so fast, like he's been around forever. What's he doing? But it's about getting the balance of like, all right, do the thing, but do it in a sustainable way where it's not going to drive yourself into the ground. So, we've had some conversations with that about you in the show. You want to share a couple thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for anyone that's been following for a while, then I've been on less frequently lately, and a lot of that is trying to find a different kind of balance. So we've even talked about this on the show before, but I tend to suffer from migraines. I get kind of, I have several things going on at once, and we've also talked about that on the show before. So I think when I have all these things going on, then there's a tendency to want to keep participating in things, and then finding that somewhere along the way other parts of my life are giving, or there's stress or anxiety within them that is, they're all good things, but it's still just too many things.
Right.
So just trying to sort of reel back and reset on some of those things right now. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, is find a sort of work-life balance that, because what I witness for myself anyway is when I'm under a certain level of stress or anxiety, even when it's self-induced with all positive things, I don't do great at all those things And then that starts making me frustrated and more anxious, and it starts a bad feedback loop. So there ends up becoming like rumination, and my brain starts going places it doesn't normally go. And it's like, oh, wait, these are all good things. Calm down.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I just sort of need to like reset and do that. So one of the things I'm doing right now is trying to go through sort of a reset period and just like, okay, focus, get your mind together, practice those things that you know you're good at or that you set up years ago that bring you happiness and joy and that you're productive with. And so, of course, I have like a full-time day job, and then we add on like podcasting and art and reading and all these other kinds of things that I do. And then I have some side clients I work for as well. And then I've got this new big fancy shop. And so I've just kind of got all these things, and it's like, pace yourself.
Yeah,
Pace
and
yourself.
you didn't even mention that list any time or space for personal stuff that comes up too, right?
Yeah, like
so,
that's and that's one of the things I was trying to think about the other day. If you could make it's the Matthew McConaughey thing, like you can do 5 things and you can make B's or C's at all of them, or you can find your 3 things and you can just try to make A pluses at all of those. And if you're going to find your 3 things, hopefully one of them, at least for me anyway, is having a good relationship with my wife. So that needs to be one of the things, a good relationship with myself, a good relationship with my wife. And then from there, you can sort of just start going, okay, what's important to you? What's important to you? And when that list gets out to 5 or 6, I do find that I start making C's in everything and not making any A's at all. And when I think about who I want to be when I get older, then it's like, oh, I don't want to be the guy that made C's my entire life because I had too many irons in the fire.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, that's clearly what we're about here at Helpful for Life. So we're very glad that you're paying attention to those things and staying on top of it, because that's a huge thing. And there's a lot of really good stuff in there that we could unpack further, but I'll just mention a couple things real quick, then we'll move on since we've got a lovely guest with us today. But one of the things was it made me think of body scanning, which we talked about on a previous episode. You said how you notice when you get kind of way too busy, overwhelmed, too much stuff going on, you start to notice some things in your body that start to feel different. And that's something that you've now trained and recognized. Hey, when something's feeling different, I need to take some action to make some different things happen. And oh, by the way, one of those actions is maybe doing less actions.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, we don't live in a society that's very good at reducing things, right? We have all these ambitions and goals, and almost all of them end up being add on, do more, be better, optimize, be more efficient, and it's very seldom that just like, yeah, maybe doing less is the answer.
Yeah. No, and another phrase we talk about all the time is separating the do and the think. And then there's just the statistics and reality of, if you look at your split, okay, I got 100% of my time. If I'm spending 99.9% of the time doing, how much thinking am I really going to be able to do? And, it starts to get into that tail wagging the dog, or the elephant and the rider, whatever analogy you want to use, is like, if you're not taking the time to intentionally reflect and think about all of the things you're doing, well, there's a good chance that you're either having some inefficiencies, maybe you're doing some things that you shouldn't be doing, like maybe you're stretching yourself for something because of some thoughts that you have that actually aren't even reflected otherwise, all those types of things.
That's the craziest thing. I think at least for me, is the thoughts that come up when I'm under stress that never show up when I'm not, right? Like, so there's like an evil alter version of me that comes out trying to protect me from situations I'm in that invents like toxic narratives. And I have to go like, whoa, what the heck is happening here, right?
Right. Oh, for sure. And the trouble is our own minds can be our worst enemy a lot of times, and that gets worse sometimes if you have the space and to think about it, but you're not doing anything about it, or you don't give yourself the time and space to think about it, so it's just always in the back of your head. And then you combine that with the fact that sometimes it's just us, and like, for example, yesterday, we were doing this, we're talking about this learn how to cook to impress a date cohort that we were doing, and we were going to do that this week, and yesterday we started talking about it on the show, and we're like, oh, we're going to do that this week. And then yesterday, as we started to go put the plan into motion, we're like, you know what? It feels rushed. And it took us about halfway through the day to realize, you know what? We're the ones putting this own deadline
No,
on ourselves.
yeah.
And it's like, why are we, and we're both all feeling all tense and like all like nervous, and then like, oh, there's so much to do. And it's like, whoa, okay, all right, like you're putting all this pressure on yourself. Are you going to put out the product that you're going to be proud of? Are you going to put out that A+ that you really want this to
or
be?
is this you're forcing out a C?
Right, exactly. And so
just
yeah, and I was
forcing
like,
out.
there are times where I prefer C's to A's, but in this case that wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
So let's jump over to our intro. Helpful for life. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to What the Hell is Water, where you think it could be a quick recap, and next thing you know, you look up, it's the next day. Our guest was
sorry, we just talked for 8 hours.
Yeah,
Oops.
our guest was like, "Hey, I need a minute. Let me go grab my beret or whatever." Just
Beret.
kidding. That's an inside joke. But we're like, "Oh, don't worry. We'll talk plenty." So with that, let us go ahead and jump over to our guest here in a second as we introduce her first, because that's what you do with guests. Today on our show, we have Libby Corneau. She is a lovely friend of both us personally, but also the show. She came on back in December, and she had a little 1-2 punch. The first day she came on, we had an episode, I believe it was called WHAM!
Whammy!
And the first part of that actually is an acronym, WHAM, Wholesomeness, Hospitality, Art, and Munchies. And the first time we talked about wholesomeness and hospitality, because that's right up in line with what Libby does for her job and for her life. And today we're going to talk about the art and the Munchies, which is the way that she brings this hospitality and wholesomeness to the world. So let's go ahead and jump over to her. Good morning, Libby. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Good morning. How are y'all?
Good. Yeah.
Sweet.
It's all right.
It's
It's
had
all
better
right.
days,
Yeah,
but
I
pretty
slept
good.
well last night, so that really sets the stage.
Do you
For a good day.
do you what are you, 8 hours sleeper, 10 hours? What do you go for?
It varies. I'm okay on like 6. That's not preferred. That's like if you have to. But solid 8 hours. I've been known to get 9.
Yeah.
I can do with 10, but anything over that's like a little much. I naturally wake up in the morning unless it was a really late night before.
Yeah.
Like
But
early.
yeah, you get 10 hours of sleep every night, right?
I mean, 15 if I can. Just for late. I was just reading something the other day about how this idea of 8 hours of sleep is not like, I don't know, it's kind of just like a normative thing that people talk about, but everyone's got their own thing. And so for some people, having like 6 hours is an amazing night's sleep.
Yeah. This is the thing, talking about how it's just actually around our work day and stuff like that. Now people used to like nap during the day and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we can always move back to that future.
Yeah. Sorry. Totally derailed.
No, it's actually okay because it's a perfect segue. I mean, I was like totally listening to what y'all were talking about before. And I would say for me, it's the quality of sleep over the quantity of sleep. Like comparatively, last night's sleep was great because the night before I woke up and I was sick. So, quality over quantity.
Feel that for sure. Well, so Libby, last time you were on here, we talked about wholesomeness and hospitality, and I forgot to mention in your intro, but the next day we actually had you on, and we ended up doing some cooking together, and we made a rustic pear tart and a homemade Irish cream, which for those who've ever had Bailey's before, that's a very popular brand you could buy of this. But in addition to the Irish cream, we made some Kentucky cream, which we made with some bourbon. So for those who are interested in any of that, you could go check out those episodes. We'll include the links are already in the description, actually. But yeah, and for those of you who are audio only, it's episodes 57 and 58. But for today, we're talking about art and Munchies, and so let's go ahead and just jump right on in. Let's start off with the Munchies, because I think we will probably talk our way out with the art, because we could talk about a long time about that. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think Libby and I both have too much background in that space.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So when it comes to Munchies, Libby, I guess what does food mean to you, and like why do you care about it, and why do you even cook, much less do it for a job?
Yeah, well, why do I cook? I just truly enjoy it. The whole process, planning a meal, shopping for a meal, which some people hate. So I find that a blessing. But really, today, if you don't like shopping, place your order and pick it up. Um, but I enjoy the whole process. I really like looking at what I have, what can I create, and just coming up with something that probably is going to taste good. It may not, and that's okay. But take chances, and it's fine. So I just truly enjoy cooking, and I really like making food that tastes really delicious, but is not going to like weigh you down, or you're going to need a nap after. Like I can cook the hearty, full of flavor, not necessarily just full of flavor, like the hearty, like stick to your bones meals.
Yeah.
But I really like making flavorful, healthful foods. And then on top of that, why I do it for a job, some people just really don't like cooking. They don't have the time to cook, whatever their reason is. So you do your thing and I'll do my thing, which is cooking. And then we can team up. And then hopefully at that point, then everybody's living their best life.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like we were just talking about, living your best life, and some of that is doing less, right? And so maybe for some
Yeah.
people, that doing less is cooking, right? Like, okay, well, of all the things I'm choosing to do in the world, I've decided cooking isn't one that I'm going to spend a lot of time in. And for me, that's not a phrase that I say, but there's certainly times of my life where I'm cooking less. But one of the things that I really like about cooking, and I also think you do a great job through your cooking, both just for us, personal meals, but also as a business, is I think you help open people's eyes to what food can be. And I don't know if it was just from your experience moving to California. For me, that was a big part of my food journey as I got exposed to a whole bunch more types of food. Here in Dallas, there is a great wide variety, but and also some of it's just time, when we were born and all that. But when I grew up here in Dallas, I had Chinese food, but it was Chinese takeout. So it wasn't really Chinese food. And then I move out to LA and I have Vietnamese coworkers, Korean coworkers, and they're taking me to all like the legit places, like, started by people who are, immigrants, and it's like you go into the place, and that a good phrase is, when you go into an Asian place and if everyone there is Asian, like you might be onto something. If everyone in there is white, maybe not, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've of course we've got a pretty good scene in Richardson for a lot of different kinds. If you're in the Dallas area and you're looking for good Chinese food, or I don't know, any kind of Asian food, then there's a whole scene down there that is based around this. And a lot of the places you go into are, you'll be one of the only people speaking English, and it's like, oh, this is authentic, or something.
Yeah.
You're, at least you feel like it is. And like, because I'm kind of clueless about all of it, then it's like a wonderful being a tourist at home kind of journey.
Yeah, for sure. And so that's what, again, I don't want to speak for you, but for me, when I went out to California and I got exposed to more of those types of foods, and then also, of course, California has the whole healthiness vibe going forward, the organic vibe. So I imagine that going there, living there, especially in contrast with Texas, which is very much like down home cooking,
Meat and
plenty-
potatoes,
meat and
delicious.
potato, yeah, plenty of butter and mayonnaise and casseroles and things like that. So I don't know, like I guess for me, you can make food that is healthful, healthy. It's got those good nutrients for you, but it doesn't like taste like a vegetable, right? It's like, oh yeah, don't get me into that gross stuff, right?
Yeah. So I think y'all hit the nail on the head, or well, first, Ryder, I'm going to have to come to Richardson, you said.
Oh yeah.
I love Asian food. I was just telling somebody this weekend, if I had to eat only one style kind of food cuisine the rest of my life, it would be Asian food. I'm totally okay with it. And then, yes, Reed, you hit the nail on the head. Moving to California totally broadened my culinary experience journey. And then I picked up a lot of things there from the different cultures who are cooking in restaurants, as well as the clients who I worked for. Some had various dietary restrictions, so we would do certain types of meals, no gluten, or all kinds of things, vegan, vegetarian, keto. Like I did all of it. And so, and that was while cooking as a personal chef. So I really got to customize and tailor things, and I still do that. but to my clients who had those particular dietary restrictions. And so it taught me a lot. And so I, like you do in life, hopefully you take all those bits of pieces and things and you put them in your tool belt, and then you continue to expand on them. And I brought them back here to Texas, and I live in fairly rural communities. I think like the biggest town in my area is, I think roughly, we'll say 10, 15,000 people. But there are a lot of small communities, and don't be fooled. There are people moving to these rural areas from bigger cities. So it's really a fun market to be in. I get to take all of these down home food flavors, bring in like Asian flair and healthful flair and gluten-free, because those people are everywhere too. I mean, gluten-free folks are everywhere. And so being able to just kind of bring some freshness and a new flair to this area, it's been a lot of fun. And there are a lot of things in store. I was just talking about getting my fresh pressed juices in a couple of different places in this area. So it's a good time. I'm loving it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but stereotypes do hold a little bit of truth, right? But when I think of the average, rural country Texas person, I'm not necessarily thinking they're sitting there with a fresh pressed juice and some super healthy like tofu Asian dish. You know what I mean?
Well, sure, absolutely. You might think, but Reed, you know better to not stereotype people. And I mean, I can get super specific. Like one of my biggest markets right now is Round Top, Texas, and Round Top is booming for population 99 people. I mean, I'm not joking when I say that, and y'all probably get it, and you've heard it, and you heard it on the news around the country. People from big metropolitan areas are recognizing what they really want out of life. And not everybody, some people are urban folks, and that's great. But a lot of people are wanting to move out to more space, more land, like get back to nature. We'll say that. Get back to their roots. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a nostalgia for some sort of past that most of these people have never had that they now assume that they really want. Yeah. And so they're trying to chase down this dream of it, and we'll see how that plays out. But it is nice because rural communities have been increasingly dying over time, population decreasing, losing a lot of traction. And to actually see people moving back into them and revitalizing them is really pretty great, because some of these towns really do deserve to live. I mean, where else do you get your culture from? Like, because most urban centers end up being like duplicates of each other.
Yes, they do. Yeah, like absolutely. And so it's really fun to see it in, again, my area. I'm Brenham, Burton, Columbus, Navasota, LaGrange. This is kind of all like one stretch of area between Houston and Austin, essentially. Yeah. It's like 290, 10-ish area from Houston to Austin is kind of the area that I serve. I'm not quite as far as Houston, quite as far as Austin, but that area in between there and all those communities, there is a lot of life. There is a lot of good food coming into those areas. There is tons of art, lots of art. So let's talk about that too in a bit. But there's lots of great art. So, and I'll be real with y'all. There was a time in my life when I was going to move to like around the Boulder, Colorado, Denver area. That has a fabulous market for everything we're talking about too. It's just so saturated. And so I would have been just one of many and a very large pond. So I think the stars aligned. We're talking about manifesting and just the universe doing its thing. And I'm so blessed to be in the area that I'm in, because I can do WHAM, art and Munchies, in a really fun way. And
I wanted to point out the market that you're in. Not to say that there's no opportunity there, but more so to point out that I think it's really cool that you can be that bridge for people. And yes, there are plenty of people who are already eating healthy, and there are plenty of people who are eating well and diverse. But I'm sure there are plenty, just like anywhere else, who have not been exposed to quite that much. And I've heard phrases said like, and not all just from Texas, mind you, for sure, all over the place. But like, oh, I don't eat anything green, or it's like, oh, those vegans, those vegetarians, I need me 10-ounce steak and just some of those potatoes on the side. I'm good to go. So I think it's really cool that you can be a part of them widening their window of what they think is good. And I don't know, I would love to hear a bunch of Southern people walking around saying like, you know what? I had me some eggplant the other day. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's the path we're on for sure. Go ahead, Ryder.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I wasn't even thinking about that this time, but it's there. Yeah, a sexual joke. Jokes.
Okay, there must be something going on there. It's cool. It's all good.
We're getting married. We're having a baby.
We're having a baby.
So it's very
Reed
top of
keeps
mind.
talking about eggplant. It's just okay, so circling back around though, the kind of idea that is fun is the idea that there's this kind of educational aspect of introducing people to new things, seeing what really does stick, or if people are just doing things out of ingrained habit, right? Or sometimes I wondered about like cultural machismo, right? Like men only eating steak and potatoes,
right.
that kind of thing, versus like, well, if you actually did try like real Szechuan chicken, not just the pickup Chinese kind, like what would happen to you? Would that just like blow your taste buds open, and then all of a sudden you'd be down for everything? Like there becomes this kind of like idea of like sort of sneaking in or incepting new experiences into people's life.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I was thinking of one thing, which I'll get to because it's more recent and relevant to, but I did that with a friend. Okay. So I come from a hunting background. We hunt and gather white-tailed deer mostly. And so we had venison, essentially it was like little venison chicken fried steak strips with gravy and rice. So delicious. It's tender. And anyway, but I had a friend growing up who would not eat that at all. She was like chicken and ranch kind of girl. And so we just told her it was chicken fried steak and she loved it until then we told her what it was and it freaked her out. And that's like a 15-year-old girl for you. She might be more open to it now. But so that's one experience from when I was a kid. And then more recently, I have one of my casseroles is a spaghetti squash, like pasta bake. And so I started making that and introduced it to a friend who is a client of mine, and she buys it now all the time for her family, who, I think they're cultured enough to try different things, but maybe we'll say mostly like a meat and potatoes kind of family. But now that's one of their favorite dishes that they order all the time. So
that's good. So I want to point out a couple things. Mm-hmm. One, because, to me, it's common knowledge, but I think there are a lot of people who may not be aware. Libby made a comment, they're a chicken and ranch kind of person. Well, I want to point out there are certain types of people, and I've had friends who are like this, who they just eat ranch with everything. And their idea of a meal oftentimes, and this happens with kids too, because parents are tired, they don't want to deal with it, the kids are fighting, so just give them chicken tenders, right? And that's like the kind of the go-to thing. And then also it's like, okay, you're going to have to eat your veggies, but then they get to have ranch to dip the veggies in to make them palatable. And so there's some people who like, that's just how they go through life. Like they just have ranch with everything. And so being able to, actually, I was very proud of myself. Back in college, I broke one of my friends. I said, all right, look, if you're going to be drinking ranch anyways, let's do a blind taste test with the light version and the full fat version and see which one you like better. Because if it's the light version, I'm just saving you like 7,000 calories a day. And he actually liked the light one better. And so therefore, he's now lost 55 pounds. And, actually, I don't know how many weight. I'm just making that last part up. But.
Yeah, out of spite, he would never eat the light version again.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, there's
so great.
I remember thinking I was super cultured because I would eat Russian dressing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Or Italian,
I come from the ranch,
so
but also give me some Russian every now and then. So, Libby, we talked about one aspect of your company that's great is exposing people to other types of foods. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing related to kind of what you were talking about. I like to hide veggies in things. I think that is a super fun thing to do. Like cook down puree, some carrots, and put them in your spaghetti sauce, whatever. And I will, I'm going to plug just this chef that I follow on social media, and she has a new cookbook. I think it's More Veggies, Please. And it's a whole cookbook of kid approved, awesome, like traditional and fun recipes, but in every one, there's hidden veggies, white beans, butternut squash, all kinds of things. Nikki Dinky, her name is just so fun, and she's such a delight. Nikki Dinky, More Veggies, Please. I'm pretty sure is
No,
what
no,
it's called.
that's a great plug. We will include a link to that later. But one of the things that made me think of is like how with you I've had some desserts where it's like, oh, this is like sweet potato something or other, or it's like you have a vegetable as a key part of a cookie or a brownie or something like that. And of course, if you like hear the name, you're like, I don't want that. But then you like have it and you're like, no, this is actually really good. Oh, and it's like less calories and it's giving me, vitamins,
Vitamins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I have one cookie that has pureed pumpkin as the only moisture. It's the dry ingredients, pureed pumpkin, dark chocolate chips. And then another chocolate chip cookie has avocado in it.
Nice.
To take out some of that nasty butter. I'm just kidding. We just use the butter somewhere else.
Yeah, intelligent use of butter. I like it. So we're talking about one of the things that's great is how you help expose people's palates and help widen their palate. And one of the things I wanted to point out was you said that, okay, maybe that family is a little more open to trying new things and things like that. But it's one thing to try something, and it's another thing to make it at home, right? And especially if you're busy and you're trying to make something, like if you're going to reach for something to make kind of by default, it's probably not going to be that Asian dish that I've never made before. So that's another nice thing about, using something like Libby or even doing one of those meal kit delivery services, whether it be your Blue Apron, your I'm gonna blank on all the HelloFresh, all those types of things, right? Yeah. Those are one of the best things about them is it's like, oh, I made teriyaki chicken today, and I never would have made that before because they gave me the small little bottles of the things, so I don't have to waste and all that kind of stuff. So the exposure to a wide variety of foods and also more healthy foods is one part of what you do, but another part and a real value that you provide is to me, one of my favorite things that you do is you bring kind of like warmth and joy into relationships, into people, but also into their home, and in this case, one of your main vectors of doing that is through your food and through your art. So tell me a little bit about like what that means to you and like how you aim to do that.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I have an example that I think kind of pretty much defines it, but I can certainly elaborate on it. So I was cooking regularly for a family in California when I was doing in-home meal prep. And this family, 2 working parents, 3 kids, like elementary, middle, high school, like beautiful family. And they just didn't have time to cook dinners. Typically, the mom's parents lived with them, but for a few months out of the year, they go back to Japan every year. And so during this time, they just needed somebody else to be preparing their meals. And so my favorite thing, I'd be like cleaning up, wrapping up. Usually I would put all of the meals family style into the refrigerator and then leave one out for them for that evening. And being able to see like the kids would come home first and then the parents would come home and like the mom would just sit down with the daughter and like do homework or whatever it would be. And then the dinner was ready and they could just do their family thing stress-free. It was beautiful. Like, I think that kind of like shows you like why I like to do this. And anyway, it kind of makes me emotional sometimes, but that's what I really love about providing meals and I do more than just meals, cookies, sweets, treats. We talked about fresh pressed juices. It doesn't have to just be a full meal, but just being able to bring people together and make their lives a little easier. And the food is delicious. Like I'm not trying to be boastful, but I'm not going to serve you something that doesn't taste good. So it's a good time for everybody, I think.
Well, that's one of the things that you do that's really special is, it's hard, before we brought you on, we were talking about the difficulties of balancing all the things we're trying to do in our lives, right? And food, just for sake of survival, like, oh, I'm going to eat calories so I have enough energy for my body to keep going. Like, sometimes that's what we end up stooping to, that low level, right? But whenever you're able to use someone like yourself or whatnot to get, yes, you are getting that nourishment, but one, it's better because it's higher quality and it's getting you more nourishment, things like that. And it's prepared with love and it's prepared with care, and all those things that come from having a home cooked meal you can provide without the stress and the pain and the angst and all that kind of stuff that can come with trying to fit that as just one other thing in your day. So I think that's so cool that it's like, hey, it's something that's really hard to purchase, is that like feeling that time, that space back, the ability for them to do that. Like if you go and say, hey, I want to be able to sit down with my son and do the homework with him, but yet still have a home cooked meal, like that's like a hard thing to figure out. So I think it's really cool that your company helps do that.
Yeah, thanks. And we do it in a couple ways. And the way that's working the best for me and the folks in my area is I do bulk casseroles and prepared meals. And another example, one of my clients sent me a picture of the empty lasagna container in the trash can, like scraped clean, with a comment, "This was the best lasagna ever. Even the baby loved it." It was just like, oh, I love those. I love those comments. I should really take snapshots of them.
Yes, you totally should.
When I
As your business
them.
coach, I will tell you.
Yeah,
need
you
to start
should
doing that.
turn those into art, right? Make a painting of that empty lasagna tray.
Yeah.
Oh my
sure.
gosh.
I love that idea.
This is why I say every day, like, more brains are better than one. This is so good. Y'all were talking about intentionality and manifesting earlier. And so, I think just being a little more intentional with what your needs are. And if you know about me, then we can, you can plan and intentionally make your life a little easier, if that made sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's the goal, right? Is the one thing that's interesting is we're talking about being under stress and doing too many things, and sometimes your brain does not click over into, at least for me, what can somebody else do for you?
Yes.
I just keep bearing down harder onto what I need to take care of, right? I just keep working harder, thinking that will solve the problems. And so there's this kind of idea that's just like, oh yeah, take your foot off the gas, outsource. Like, figure something out. Reed and I have talked about this before, but this is an ongoing issue for me. So,
yeah, well, and it's kind of like tunnel vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you start doing the thing, and the worse it gets, like the more intense, the more stress. Like you're literally, I have a very vivid image of like your sight just narrowing in, and it's like, I need to do this one thing I'm focusing on. And, it's kind of silly, but it made me think of Rocket League, the video game I play, because the nice thing about that is it's a 5-minute game, and after every game you can watch the replay. And sometimes when you watch the replay, you're like, look at that idiot. He's running around. He's chasing the ball. He goes and jumps. Like, clearly you're not going to get to that. And he just goes, and you're like, but he can't see that.
Like, oh, that was me.
That was me, right? Exactly. You're like, but he can't see in the moment, like all the stuff that's going on, all the factors at play. He was stressed out because all these things, both within and outside his control. So sometimes you just need an outside person to be like, hey, look, let me show you the way. Here's this thing that you can do, and here's one way you can make it that much better. So one of the ways you make it that much better is through food, but another one is through art. So let's move the conversation in that direction.
Yeah.
So, I want to scope us because we could talk forever about this, but I guess I do want to ask you, why art? Like, what about art is something that, I don't know, inspires you? And why do you like it personally? And then also, why is it something that you felt the need or desire to turn out and give into the world? Like what is art to you?
Sure. Well, a lot of kids like color and paint and that kind of thing. But even from a young age, I've just always loved, creating somehow. And usually it was drawing, but it was drawing a lot of the same things. But I vividly remember thinking to myself as a kid, like, I'm going to be an artist one day. But as a kid, I wanted to be like a sculptor, because driving to my grandparents, when we took this drive a lot there was some man, woman, family. They had all of this metal artwork in their front yard, and it was kind of on a rural road, so they had this very large, I don't know, call
Display.
it display. Yeah, just this very large yard along this road, and all of these different like metal pieces of artwork. And so in my mind as a child, I was going to be like a metal sculptor of
I
some
like
sort,
it.
which could still very much so happen. And then in college, I started painting more. I don't know, something just popped in me. I think it was actually that my roommate and I painted a lot together, and so I was like, yeah, I want to like paint on canvas, and so it just has kind of evolved. And I would say I mostly paint abstract, not very many realistic things. That's not super inside my wheelhouse. I can do it, but it just takes like a different part of my brain and focus and time and attention and technique and time. It takes a lot more time. So I typically paint abstract and really just whatever I'm feeling, and typically inspired by something. I try to not force it, because then it just gets weird. Not just the artwork itself, but like the feeling inside of you. It's like, I don't know. So yeah, just really paint when I'm inspired. But now I do have folks asking for some commission pieces, which is thrilling and also terrifying, because it is typically, or at least up until this point, has also been a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But I'll be honest, like with this last one, which, let's see, I put my computer on a swivel, so hopefully it's
Oh,
just
look,
an
I can go
even
full screen for
spin.
There you go.
So this one is a new one that I'm doing, and a commission piece. And this woman showed me a picture. Hey, can you do this? And I was like, so I really thought about it for a second, like, because I've learned to say no, thankfully. And so if it was not something that I could do, I would say no. But it was in my wheelhouse enough. I was like, yeah, I can do that. So took some time, learned some new techniques, and just went for it. And I'll be honest, I had a phone call with her yesterday after sending her a picture, and I'm going into like this whole story, but it's fine because there's, I think, a purpose for it. I knew it was a little off based on what she showed me, but Ryder, maybe you can relate. Like at some point you have to stop, and maybe you will come back to it, but at least at that point, you just have to like stop. And so I knew it was a little off, and she and I talked about it yesterday, and everything that I thought was like just a little off, it's not anything's wrong. It just needs a little more. We were right in line with each other. Everything she was thinking, I was thinking. And so that's nice. But it has inspired other paintings, and it has taught me new techniques, and it's made me a better artist. So all that to say, take the chance, do the leap, I don't know. There were a lot of things in there.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you drive this conversation.
Oh
Mr.
yeah, no,
Art Man.
it's totally fantastic, and you're right. Commissions are so tricky. It's so hard because the person you're working for has a vision in their mind, and you're somehow supposed to make this. And even if they show you a picture, you're lucky, because sometimes they won't even show you a picture. They'll just be like, "I just kind of want it to be like on fire." And you're like, "What?" Like, it's a car. And they're like, "Yeah, but you know what I mean, right? You get it.
Yeah.
And if you could make it pop, it's that kind of stuff." And I'm just like, so sometimes commissions are hard because the communication is hard. But what's kind of interesting is taking on that challenge. It's a form of communication that's also interpretation, and turning those kind of mental concepts, those fuzzy, vague feelings, into something that is real and tactile, and people can see, and it aligns with their vision. It captures their emotion. Like, being able to do that is this profound task. I mean, it is super amazing that humans can even do that or communicate in that way at all. And so the other funny thing I was going to tell you is, if you probably wouldn't have mentioned anything you thought was wrong with your piece, the client probably would have thought it was amazing, because I bump into this all the time.
Well, yes. Although I sent it to her and just said, "Hey, let me know what you think," and she was like,
Oh, yeah.
"There are a few changes I want to make."
Oh.
But the funny thing is, everything that I was thinking I wanted to add to it was everything that she said she wanted changed or added. She wants it brighter, messier, the heart tip to be pointier, and more pinks and purples and reds. So that was,
Right on.
I would not have known that particularly, but based on what she sent me, it does need to be messier. It does. Oh, and it go out of the lines more, like go out of the heart lines more with the splatters. And anyway, so, but that's why I was like, okay, I need a pause here because it does need to be messier, but I don't want to just like go, go, go. My thought
No.
was, let me show it to her. Maybe she'll love it as it is. And if so, great. But,
Well, and those are
we're
good.
just going to go
Those
at
are
it.
good things too. Like those are all like one of the things that I think is interesting about doing commissions is like you and I might be fine with the work the way it is right now, but because it's a commission, you get pushed further outside of your comfort zone. And really, the only way we learn anything, it seems, is to go through that pain. And
Yes.
so now, but you're right, like readdressing a painting that is already in a good state and coming back in and adding in something like a different
Yeah,
pink or
it's like,
red to it, you're like, yeah. Well, and it's like this thing is
it feels
already
weird here.
fine. Like,
Yeah.
yes. And then you have to realign yourself with the external object, right? Once you have to put yourself into a different state of mind because you're aligned with it as it is, that got you to point A. And then to get to point B, you have to basically become a slightly different person.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about that stuff in your head, that mental shift, and it's just difficult. It's just really hard to
Yes.
do.
Yes. And here's another layer. So, with the world that we're in, I'm trying to be more active and transparent and vulnerable and real on social media. I mean, in life too. Like, I think I have that part, but putting it out there on social media. So, I've shared the process of creating this. And I've gotten fabulous feedback, which is so nice. And from another artist friend, I was real with her just in a direct message, and not about all the things that I just shared here, but like, oh, I wasn't sure if I should add more. She was like, no, it's perfect. And I didn't tell her, like I just said, all these other, that it was a commission and I was trying to make it look like something particular. But just that other layer of a peer who you admire saying like, no, it's great. Don't do a thing,
Yeah.
And so but you really don't know they didn't really know the whole story. So
Well, and have you
anyway,
thought
but
about
all the
just making a
layers.
completely separate painting? Because I've done that before. I've just been like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? This one is fine the way it is. I will just spend another, whatever it is, 40 hours starting a new painting. And I've done that before, and especially if you think that there's going to be like traction on it, because I do things in series, so I'll do 6 at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
that way I
Mm-hmm.
have a whole body of work, and then I can move the body of work. So this is just being different iterations, and along the way you increase your skills on each one, try something different on each one. And so it just a different, if you're going to get into this sort of art marketing and production aspect, it's
Mm-hmm.
something different to think about, not putting all your
Okay,
eggs
I
into the
will
one
think about.
piece.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll definitely think about that. That would also, that's such a great idea. And but thinking about that with this one, that also is kind of like that. Well, maybe I leave it. Maybe I start a new one. And then the other layer of the food aspect of my business, I have some Valentine's orders that I'm fulfilling starting at the end of the week. So anyway,
Yeah, there's
it's all
the
good
reality
things. These
there
are
of
all
right.
good
Like,
things.
what's the creative thing that's gonna be best? What's the thing that's
Mhm.
gonna stretch me and my skills, help me develop?
Yeah.
What is the thing that's just the reality of like what's gonna put food on Libby's table and what's gonna make her money? Because after
Mm-hmm.
all, this is a business
Mm-hmm.
too. And then what's gonna
Mm-hmm.
make the client happy? Because one of the
Yeah.
things you didn't explicitly say, but I'm sure was at least in between the lines there was you don't always give the client every single thing that they want, right? But having them be a part of that process and having them say some of those things can
Yeah.
help you shape that work, especially if it is a personal one-on-one commissioned work. But some of that client-based thing, which knowing from talking with you about other types of clients too, is like some point you just got to be like, this is what you got, unless you want to change the
Yeah.
contract and
Well,
do
and
something
I've done
else,
the
right?
thing before where I was like, yeah, we're this is what needs to be delivered here, and your mind keeps changing, which is fine, but now there needs to be a monetary renegotiation as we move forward, right? Like,
Yeah.
we have met the deliverable. Now what? Because that's something else that is also fascinating is when people see something in progress. they'll change their mind as they go. And you can ask any contractor who's done a kitchen remodel. This happens every time. It's just work changes. And so it goes into art and everything else. Is people are trying to find their vision and personality through you as the creator. And that's a really
Yes.
interesting, sticky field to navigate. It's also, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just that it's a conversation you have to navigate.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
and you feel free to add on to this. Sorry if I interrupted you, but that
No,
was a
you're
big
fine.
thing for me when I started to do quote unquote commissioned work for my company. As we started to work on things like the music that goes in the intro video, the logo and the branding and the colors and the fonts that represent our brand. As I started to have those conversations with people, and realizing that it's a whole language and a whole communication in and of itself, and figuring out that process. That one nice thing about that was I approached a whole bunch of different people and I tried it with a bunch of different people, which was good for me because then I could figure out like, oh, I need to do more of this, less of that. I don't like how that person does that. But one of the things I found that worked really well for me is seeing a bunch of options, like, oh, hey, this is what it could be like. And here's start out with say 10 or 12 things. And then I say, oh, I like that. I like that aspect of that. I definitely don't like that. Being able to see the palette that I can choose from and use that. And then we iterate and then we come back and then it's just 5 options and you kind of rinse and repeat and you get closer and closer to the thing that you want. I found that so much more helpful than trying to use, there are these terms, right? Like, oh, I want it to be bold or I want it to be sharp. I want it to be, friendly. And you have all these things, but also the further away you are from the design world, you don't know the elements that it takes. Like, oh, okay, well, if you round the corners there, if you change from this type of font, you go sans serif, it's going to have this kind of effect. Oh, and if you go uppercase versus lowercase, like all those thousands of tiny design decisions, like until you get into that world and have some experience and get some of that knowledge, like you just don't know. And so that's why you're like, oh, can you make it more grr?
Yeah, I know. Well, and at the end of the day, the grr is a valid feeling because what we're often trying to do is within a split second is to get somebody to have a feeling, to have an emotional reaction, and we're trying to do this in this visual manner. So you're sort of hijacking visual stimuli for emotional stimuli, and the way that interaction occurs is difficult and tricky. And you're right, it has its own language. I mean, of course, I enjoy it. I'm
Right.
in the midst of it. I love doing it. But yeah, I find that the commission work is super interesting. By the way, the painting looks fantastic, Libby. I didn't mean to
Thank you.
sidetrack this whole conversation into the marketing aspect, but
No, it's okay. I
it
think I
looks
took it
great.
there too. It's fine. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was really fun to do. I'm excited to do other things with similar techniques
Yeah. No,
and
I'm
and
stoked you did. It looks great.
thank you. And and it kind of reminds me of another style that I do. I across the board in my life, I try to like reduce, reuse, recycle. I hate like just rinsing off a paintbrush when I maybe don't need the rest of the color anymore. So I've started, I call them like a side piece, like, and probably
Got
other
you side
artists
piece.
do
Yeah,
this
Nice.
yeah.
too. Yeah. Put another blank canvas down and that collects like fun brush strokes, or, I just kind of make another painting out of that. And so I do a similar that, I mean, these slash marks are similar to something I'm already doing. So I'm excited to do it again when I'm not looking at another painting and trying to get like this color right there,
Exactly right.
and it can
Yeah.
just be more natural and intuitive.
No, that's cool. And, I want to make sure to mention for our viewers at home, this discussion is making me think so much of the 365 project that Kaylina Cahill did. And we had her on a week or two ago, and she talked about that. And every day she made a new illustration. And for her, it was a great way because some days it was just like a word she wrote out kind of artfully on a page, and other days it was like, oh well, now I'm gonna try and get into watercolors, and I'm gonna do this more developed thing, and then I'm gonna so basically different ones had different levels of development, but by forcing herself to do it every day, she tried new things and she used different sources of inspiration,
Yeah.
and I found that as a really good way to kind of develop your creativity, and also she was okay with the result not being great, which is a hard step,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I've done something similar. I'm not a good drawer. My brother's a fabulous drawer. My grandfather could paint nature scenes vividly. we all had a little in us, and it just like comes out in a different way. Anyway, so I did like this, tried to do a 30-day like drawing challenge. I don't know if I got all 30 days. This was years ago. But like I drew my foot, and I drew a pencil, and I drew a key, and worked on shadowing and shading, and tried to draw myself. And I ended up looking like a man, and I tried to not read into that too much. Anyway, but yeah, it just stretches you out of your comfort zone. And then after that happened, right, or maybe there's some validity to this. I'm not sure. Somebody said if you're drawing a face, like start from the bottom up. Have you ever heard that? I don't really know.
I have heard people talk about 1,000 different hacks for how to draw the face, but from a completely academically trained standpoint, you don't start with any portion. You start from general to specific. Yes. You do the largest, biggest shapes and proportions first on everything. And then you narrow down, refine. So it's a process of starting with that, that egg shape that is the head, and then figuring out, roughly where the eyes and nose are, and just marking out very vague spaces. Yeah. And so this is one of the things I've seen on Instagram. It looks super cool when somebody starts at the eyeball and they just go from the pupil and they just work out. It looks amazing, but it's completely impractical.
Not practical.
Yeah. Well, my spatial awareness isn't great for that kind of thing. I think that's why I looked like a man, because like everything just was not very proportionate.
It happens. I often draw myself to look like a woman on accident, but
and then other times on purpose too.
Yeah, sometimes
I'm somebody else. Just creating filters with our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the first filter.
I like
it's just like artists who can't do proportion.
Well, as you start to beef up your tech, Libby, I think a tablet that you can draw on is a cool thing, because I know watching one of our friends do his digital illustrations, and literally you starting out with the sketch layer, but then you're switching over to the other layer, and then not only being able to do all that, but then you can like play it as a video back. I think is a really cool thing. So we'll dabble in that a little bit. So one last question, then we're gonna go because we could talk all day.
Yeah, I've got a doctor's appointment, so I'm gonna have to run in a couple minutes.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with a very easy question to answer very briefly, and Ryder, you get up and leave whenever you need to leave. Okay. Which is Libby. So you talked a little bit about why art is, we talked some of the technical aspect, how you're using it to kind of help yourself grow and things like that. But I guess why is art something that you want to, you're selling it to people, but why is it something you want to be a part of bringing into their lives? Like why is that?
Yeah, well, most of my art, if not all of my art, is bright. So I feel like it kind of just inherently brings a feeling of joy and happiness. And that is part of my spirit. So I like to impart that into other people's homes and environments, kind of going back to that welcoming, was that the word? Wholesome hospitality. That would be a hospitality point for sure. And, honestly, I create because I enjoy doing it. And I started to accumulate lots of paintings. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with all these? I gave some away, definitely. But I thought, why not tack this on to what I offer in my business, and just provide this, something fun and pretty to look at into other people's homes. I really like abstract art because this is clearly a heart, but a lot of my art is just abstract, and you could look at it this way, you could look at it this way, you could look at it this way, and there's always something, and everybody always sees something different. So I think it is just fun, and I'll just end it there because I could just go on and name different things.
I mean, I like that a lot too, and let me be more specific about what I'm saying. I like the ability to interpret the thing in different ways, right? I mean, it's one thing, like, yes, I definitely appreciate like a hyper realistic, super, like, wow, somebody did that with their hands. Like, that is so cool that they can make something that looks that realistic. Like, I like that and I appreciate that. But I also think there's something different about saying like, hey, this is either intentionally not meant to look like something, Or maybe it's meant to kind of look like this one thing, but not exactly. But hey, maybe it makes you think of these other things. And hey, maybe sometimes I actually intentionally hang it the wrong way just to see what
Yeah,
happens, or I rotate it when I'm posting it online or whatnot. Because the reality of art is, and we could have a whole episode on this in and of itself, but it's about beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? You can take it wherever you want it to
absolutely.
go.
Absolutely. And that is why I don't sign my artwork on the front, because I think that kind of then inherently puts your mind in a box that it needs to be hung this way so that the signature is read this way. And I know somebody hung a painting sideways one time. And so the signature's on the side. And I think it was in a winery, and somebody I was with, it drove them nuts that the painting was hung on the side. I was like, that's why I don't sign. And it was an abstract art piece. It's like, that's why I don't sign
That's very
my
clever.
art
I
on
didn't
the
know you did
front.
that. Nice.
He's always on the back. But then a friend did tell me, because I was signing the wood. I mostly paint on stretched canvas. And they're like, Libby, one day that might need to get restretched. You need to make sure you sign the
The
canvas
canvas
itself.
itself.
So
Oh, smart. See, you live and you learn. No, that's
that
another
is
big
my
thing that,
two minds are better than one.
yeah, no, and that's one of the great things has been awesome watching you do as you start doing the thing. And I thought the kind of analogy that Ryder was using, maybe without realizing it, was really great, which was, hey, start off with the broad strokes, get the
Mm-hmm,
proportions roughly right, figure out what the
mm-hmm,
overall picture looks like,
mm-hmm.
and then start to work more and more on the details. And I feel like that's kind of what you've done with your business, and with your life
Yeah.
over the last 5 years. So it's been a really cool to see that
Yes.
happen, and to see you making it a reality and turning it into that intentional manifesting. I think you've done an amazing job of that, and it's been such a joy to be alongside you as you do that, and as you discover, okay, hey, I like this food stuff, I like this
Mm-hmm,
art stuff. I also really enjoy being around people and helping bring that feeling
mm-hmm,
of warmth,
mm-hmm,
and just being a good person and being nice and
mm-hmm.
being open and being loving to everyone that you know, being a bright, shining spot, just like your paintings and your food. Like, it's hard to have a discussion with you without putting a smile on. And I think you do an amazing job of
Oh,
imbuing that into your work. I think that's part of what makes you so special. And I think that's part of what makes it easy for customers to choose to use you and say, hey, you know what? If I can bottle up just a little bit of Libby and take it home with me, either in the form of food that I can eat and make my life easier, help me form better memories, maybe some around the food, some around the things that time I got back enabled me
mm-hmm.
to enjoy. And maybe it's through some art, a piece of little piece of Libby where she's just hanging out on the edge of the canvas, and every time I look over, I can think about her. I can think about some of the positive things that this image is making me think about, but also I can
Mm-hmm.
ponder, and I can, maybe one day this person who's buying this art piece, maybe one week they decide to hang it upside down, and it's like, and then
Yeah.
everyone's going to be like, wait, why is the art upside down? And now they're having conversations, they're thinking about things, they're talking about things that they wouldn't otherwise. There's just so many great things that I think art and food help us do, and encourage us to do and engage in different parts of our brain, that we don't often do. So I think it's an amazing thing that you're doing, and I encourage you to keep going.
Thank you. I absolutely will. Yeah, everything that you just said. It. Yeah, they both bring people together. I mean, you could certainly enjoy my food alone and my art alone, but I think just inherently they bring people together and start conversations. And um, yeah, I feel like I have lots of notes here, kind of really related to everything that we're talking about. But I don't know how much time we have, so I'm going to say that I'll just keep it to one thing. I really have been listening to Armchair Expert Dak Shepard's podcast recently. I'm the type of podcast listener that finds one and like binges that one and is like true to that one for a long time. So I
Yeah,
have like two podcasts that I listen to because I just branched out to another one. Anyway,
nice.
and I love at the end of every podcast, they do a fact check. And so I want to fact check on what a Freudian slip is.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Monica Padman, his co-host, does the fact checks every time. So Freudian slip, an unintentional error regarded as revealing subconscious feelings.
Oh, so it
It's
does
not
not have to be
necessarily
sexual.
a sexual, yeah,
Oh.
but maybe a lot of people's subconscious feelings
Yeah, are
are.
sexual. I like it. Well,
Mhm,
thank you for fact
mhm.
checking us. That's pretty
Yeah, you're
good.
welcome. Yeah.
Welcome to What the Hell is Water, where not only do your guests do amazing, wonderful things in their own right, but they keep you in check and they bring you the facts that you need. So thank you so much for coming on today, Libby. Of course,
You're
like
so
always, we
welcome.
could talk forever. For those who are like, man, I want some more Libby. Where do I get it? Go to the Libby store and just order you
Mhm.
one up.
Yeah.
But no, you could go to libbykitchenandstudio.com to learn more about her, about the food she's making. Oh, by the way, you don't necessarily need to live near her in Central Texas in order to enjoy some of the things that she's created and some of the things she will create. She sells art in many different ways and also food in many different ways. And one of those ways includes shelf-stable things that you can create and enjoy anytime on a snack, as a dessert, things like that. And then, of course, if you do happen to be in the Central Texas area, either as a resident or as a visitor, definitely look Libby up because she can make your trip that much more special. You can engage with a local small business owner, and you can leave having a great time. Any last words, Libby?
No, I'm so happy to have been on with you today and finish up our WHAM conversation and talk about art and munchies. And yeah, if you're in, uh, good, thanks for the plug. If you're in Brenham, Round Top, LaGrange, I have a food booth at the Round Top Antique Fair 4 times a year with fresh, delicious food, and my art is there too. And you can hire me to cook the spread for a private event. And if you live locally, I'll deliver a casserole or 2 or 3 or 4 to your door.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
some of those you can have that day if you want, or you can also freeze them
Mm-hmm.
and save them for later for that day where you got overwhelmed and ran out of time, or maybe you had a big event
Mm-hmm.
that ruined your plans, or maybe you
Mm-hmm.
had a mystery guest come over and you need some food for
Mm-hmm.
them. There's all sorts of ways
Yeah.
where it's like just pull that lovely prepared food from Libby out of your freezer, or if you have it delivered earlier that week, then you can bite into joy thanks to Libby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thanks,
much, Libby.
Reed.
We'll talk with you later.
All right,
Bye.
sounds good. Bye.
Well, that was great. And now I find myself here very hungry. Probably because we've been talking about food for a while and I haven't eaten anything yet today. But I'm so glad that we had this discussion. Of course, I find myself wanting to have another hour of it. As with a lot of things, but especially in the art world, there's so many things we could talk about with Ryder and Libby. And then, of course, especially in the food world, given my interest and background in it, and of course, the fact that we have Kickstart Your Kitchen, and of course, the fact that we're doing the Kickstart Your Kitchen cohort next week, which we may be able to talk Libby into doing some parts of that with us next week. So we'll see how that all plays out. We will be announcing more of that as this week goes on. But for today, I'll just give a very light recap. We're tackling the second half of Wham! So as we mentioned before, we had Libby on episodes, I believe it was 57 and 58. One of those was talking about the first half of Wham, which was wholesomeness and hospitality. So make sure to get the first part of that conversation. And then the other episode, which I believe was episode 58, was when Libby and I cooked a rustic pear tart using ingredients we all already had at our house, which was great. And then we made a homemade Irish cream and a homemade Kentucky cream, which is an alcoholic, almost like it's basically ended up kind of tasting like delicious chocolate milk, and it was very good both by itself over ice cream. It was good with some coffee. It's good with some tea. We had it pretty much every dang which way, and we've made it again, and it's super easy to come together. And we ended up having a very long episode where Libby and I made those things, but we also talked through so many powerful tips that her and I have compiled over the decades of our cooking experience. Between the two of us, we've got over 50 years of experience cooking and learning how to cook. So there are a lot of really good tips in there. We had a running total. We were trying to get, I think we were over 100 tips from that. So there's so much value to be had from that, which is already up and available. And there's going to be more value coming to you guys in the future as we work with Libby as well. So today we talked a little bit about the Munchies first. We decided to front load the food conversation, and then we finished with the art. We talked a little bit about why food and art are things that are important to Libby, what it is about them that she wants to help bring into the world, and how she's doing that now. And she told a little bit about how that shifted today from her original vision with the business. And again, we talk a little bit more about the history of that in the previous episode with her as well. We talked a little bit about, hey, how do you know when a piece of art is done, when it's good enough, especially if you have someone who's commissioning that work and it's like, okay, well, this is good enough by itself. It can stand as it is, but it's not quite what they are looking for. And Ryder brought up the idea of, oh, well, maybe you turn that into a collection and then you do multiple pieces of art around that same subject, and it actually changes and morphs and improves over time. And then because it's a collection, it actually rises the value of it all, and then you can do all these other things. And of course there are a lot of business implications in there as well, but the bottom line is, at least for me, is really cool to see the art part of Ryder's brain engage and see as he starts to talk about the design aspects, the things you're looking for from the business standpoint, the reality standpoint. So there's a lot of really good stuff in there. So yeah, like I said, I'll keep the recap short-ish, and that'll be it for today. The second half of the wham, which if we had done it in order would have been am, but we actually went backwards, so it's more like ma. So ma. It doesn't sound quite as good as wham, but we'll go with it. Which leads us to a challenge for today, February 8th, 2022, episode 88, as Reed reads all of those things off to Stall as he tries to think about what a lovely challenge for today could be. And I think it's got to be either art-related or Munchie-related. And you know what? Here's the challenge. I want you guys to sometime today, or if you want to delay it, you can do it another day. It's up to you. But sometime this week, I want you guys to make art with your food. And this may sound like silly. You're like, oh, why am I going to do that? But just do it. Like, I don't care if it's your McDonald's hamburger and French fries. Like, hey, take those French fries and kind of line them up into a little smiley face. And maybe you take the pickles off of your sandwich and you put, make it look like Shrek and give it some weird funky ears or something like that. Maybe you take the ketchup packet and you start drawing. Maybe you try and turn your food into some abstract art. Maybe you have like your real meal that you like are eating, and then you have another meal where you're just like kind of playing with it and turn it into whatever. Like, you can make it like real, like childish, and like grab food and throw, and hey, maybe make your own abstract art out of your food. I don't know. I'm just here to start getting the ball rolling, make you start thinking of random things. But the reality is just go do something with your food. Kind of try and make it artistic and take a picture and send it to us and let us know what you guys think. How did the experience go? If you then ate the food afterwards, did it make you think any differently about it? Did it make you remember anything differently about it? Especially if you took a picture and you did all that. Well, guess what? Now you've had an experience, and it's like it didn't take much besides a little bit of intentional manifesting for you to somehow start getting involved with both food and art. It literally can be as easy as next time you're sitting down to eat, just think about it. Take 30 seconds, do something, and that could maybe be your first step towards your creative journey. You're creating something, and next thing you know, who knows, maybe you'll be making beautiful arts just like Libby. And if you do, make sure to tell her, because I'm sure she'll say some nice things to you, because she's just a good old nice person. All right, well, that is it for today. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see y'all next time.